Okay.
All righty.
Yeah, and you can bring us back
Oh,
to,
to the main page. Yes.
yeah.
Thank you
And
for
good
catching
afternoon,
us.
everyone. Thank you for joining in, or good morning if you're joining from the West Coast. My name is Stephanie, and I'm here with Marquita. We are bringing you another installment of the Notebook Business Education series. And I just want to thank you all for joining in and taking some time to really tap into what it means to be a business owner, some of the more complex parts of it. Marquita is an excellent guide, and we're happy to have her part of our fantastic cohort of creators, subject matter experts, speakers for our webinars and workshops. Be sure to tune in for more. We got more to come, and I'll share the links for those. I'll be in the chat throughout. I'm here representing Novo, and Novo is happy to host our customer community. Starting with our business banking platform, we've been able to attract and begin to nurture the conversations around much more than financial management. So I'll pass it over to Marquita here soon to talk about the mental load of being your own boss, the management of, yes, business finances, but much, much more than that. Work life balance, relationships, um, challenges in the please, Marquita, you go ahead and jump in, but challenges in the daily life of being a business owner. Please feel free to share what brings you in today. If you have any questions, and a little bit about yourself, where you're joining in from. Maybe we've got some neighbors in the room. Marquita, you're joining from Tampa, correct?
Yes, I'm in Tampa. Mhm.
Awesome. I'm over here on the East Coast.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, y'all. I'm going to head over to the chat and say, hey. Hey, Samantha, welcome in.
Thank you, everyone, for joining today. Like Stephanie was saying, we're talking about the mental load of being your own boss. I've been my own boss for years now, almost 10 years, actually. My eldest is almost 10. So it's been quite a bit of time since I've had someone else guiding and leading me throughout the day or throughout the week. And I know that there's such a heavy load because we wear so many hats. So I'm excited to explore those unique pressures we encounter as our own bosses, being our own bosses. So many demands that come with wearing all of those hats. Just going to see where people are from in the chat. Philly, hello from Philly, Amanda. Thank you for joining us. Stephanie and I are East Coasters. I'm just going to go ahead on and get started with the webinar. Oh, Nashville, joining from Nashville, automation service provider. Welcome, Samantha.
Yes, and just while we get started, Marquita, could you go onto the intro slide? I'll go ahead and bring us through the housekeeping. I was going to
Absolutely.
say, if y'all don't know where the chat is, you can look to the middle and the bottom of the screen where there is just a couple lines in a box there. Go ahead and tap in, say hello. I'm going to go ahead and take myself off the camera and see y'all in the chat where I'll be sharing ways to stay in touch with Marquita. And we'll be back online after the presentation piece for discussion. So be sure to stay active in the chat, use it to ask questions. Be sure to take your own notes as well. Marquita will be sharing excellent strategies and prompts for you to work with today and beyond this presentation. So we'll have you muted by default to start, but we'll have opportunities to open up the discussion towards the second half of our session here today. And you can go on back to the next slide and introduce yourself, Marquita. I'm going to say see y'all later.
We'll talk to you later, Stephanie. I see Jessie Lynn is here with us from Miami. And then we have Catherine from Delaware, too. Abby here. Thank you all for joining. Let's get started with the mental load of being your own boss. It's one of my favorite topics to discuss because I love the topics that seem as if there's nothing underneath the surface. When you think about the picture of an iceberg, there's something at the tip of it, and then we all see those graphics where there's so much underneath it. And today we're going to be talking about all the things that are underneath the surface. And so, first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I have been a practicing psychotherapist for 15 years now, and I see a variety of people. I'd love to work with individuals, couples, families. And when I say families, I more so mean siblings. And I just really enjoy holding a safe space for people. And anytime I do a webinar with Novo, I'm all about holding a safe space. So if you are here and you're thinking, I'm probably not going to feel comfortable asking my question, I'm telling you that might not be the case. You might be surprised because we really pride ourselves on making sure these spaces are inclusive and safe for all. So you'll see on here, I focus on anxiety, depression, grief, phobias, and PTSD. I am a certified clinical trauma professional, and that is why I added on the accelerated resolution therapy training for myself to get more transformative results for my clients. So please make sure you're muted. I want you to use the reactions. It's the only way I know that you're here with me and you're feeling the content. And like Stephanie was saying, be prepared to take down some notes for yourself, even if you're just typing them in your phone. You never know what's going to come up for you, when you're when you're speaking with or attending presentations about topics that usually come up in psychotherapy. So be prepared for something to show up for you. And as always, please feel free to ask your questions in the chat box. Stephanie is definitely monitoring that for us. I'm going to go over our agenda so you can know what to expect today. So around page 5, we'll get to the invisible weight that we carry as business owners. And then we're going to talk about how you can really recognize those signs that your mental load is too heavy for you. And of course, anything we go through in life, there's always the cost. There's the cost of this pressure, this load, us wearing these multiple hats. So we're going to talk about that. And then I'm going to give you some practical strategies for managing it. And then we're going to dive into some chat about Novo's business checking account, Novo reserves. We're going to have a Q&A, and then I'm going to share ways that you can connect with me if you want to connect further in the future. So let's talk about that invisible weight. It's the part that no one sees, but we know we're carrying it, right? Always having to make these decisions for our business and being the only one to make those decisions. I know that when I talk to people, it's not always the heavy parts, right? The big parts of making the decisions. You know how much product you need to order, right? You've looked at your stats, you've looked at how much people order during certain times of the month. Or if you're a service provider like myself, well, those ebbs and flows of business, when those times are going to be a higher caseload for yourself and when it's going to be a lower caseload. And sometimes it's the smaller ones. Like, how often do I market? What does marketing need to look like for me? What kind of resources, such as the Novo Business Webinar series, are you going to tap into? How are you going to tap into some masterminds to get some additional support so you can do the thinking a lot more clearly? So it's not always those big tasks. Sometimes it's the smaller ones too. Of course, we have these never-ending to-do lists as business owners. I was checking my task list before I logged in for this webinar, and I thought, oh my goodness, I have a lot. And then I added 3 more things. Like, let me know in the chat box if you look at your daily task list, and then you start adding things that you forgot. That's that invisible weight. These things that no one else is thinking about in your business except for you. And even you forget to think about them sometimes. And what I find, and this is true for a lot of things that I talk to people about in psychotherapy sessions, is that when your brain is calm, when your brain and body are calmed down, that's when your brain starts throwing that invisible weight at you, that those invisible to-do list tasks that you just forgot to add to the task list, right? Usually for me, it's when I'm laying down, it's bedtime, right? You've done your entire night routine, and then pop, 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 you just start thinking of all these things you need to do. So your mind is just rarely switching off. You're constantly cycling through the tasks, the deadlines. What do I need to order more of? Do I need to attend this networking event? Should I attend this one online? Should I stick to in person right now because my life is so busy? These are the cognitions around this thinking, the invisible weight. It's either going to be negative or positive. It's highly unlikely that it's neutral, right? And cognitions are our thinking patterns, right? Of those beliefs that we have. So we're wearing multiple hats, and it's showing in that invisible weight. So we're not just experts in our field, we're also in charge of the sales, the marketing, the operations, and so much more. And some things I really wanted you to consider is that we all know that feeling of being constantly on as being our own boss. And it's the mental energy that's involved in that planning, the organizing, anticipating every single thing because no one else is doing it, right? And I don't know about you, but when I'm asleep and I'm hopping out of bed to grab my phone to put some things down, my partner is saying, Kita, what are you doing? You said you were tired. You said you needed to go to bed. All of a sudden the brain resets, doesn't it? all of a sudden, when you get out of bed, you were so tired before, but you got out of bed to get your phone, or maybe you use a notebook. Maybe you're doing better in that area than I am. I need a notebook and not my phone to jot down these ideas down. But once you get up and switch your brain back over to business mode, boom, you're awake. How much longer are you going to be awake? You may have just fallen asleep if you would have just trusted your brain to cycle that back through the next day. But oh no, it resets you, doesn't it? And then you can't go to sleep. So think of it as that invisible weight that you carry, that constant background processing of your business that only you are doing, unless you've hired out, which is also a strategy, right? Hiring some contractors, maybe you hire on some employees to come take on certain aspects of that role. I understand as a business owner that we don't always have the funds up front to do that, right? So that's why we're having this webinar today, because sometimes we can't really turn that invisible weight into a physical task that someone else can carry for us because we're just in the early phases of our business. So later on, I'm going to share some strategies with you to help you manage your mental self while you're carrying that weight. Recognizing the signs. Are you carrying too much? And before I even go into the slide content, I want to know in the chat box, are you carrying too much already? I'll be honest with you. At the end of last year, I decided I was carrying too much. This is all too much for me, and I'm doing the most in my business. I'm doing it all myself. And so I decided that marketing needed to look different. That was the one thing that I could control. It was the one thing that was consuming so much of my mind. Am I doing it right? Did I do enough this week? I'm procrastinating in this area. I'm not carrying my own load, in the way that I need to be. I'm prioritizing my two children. That was the goal. They have to come first. How do I make sure that this gets done? So I had to really take an assessment of how I was showing up, what the stats were showing me, those numbers that you get in your analytics section of social media. And then I decided, okay, it feels like too much because it is too much. So I want to know in the comment section, how many of you already know that you're carrying too much? 9 times out of 10, if you signed up for this webinar, you signed up because you knew. You already know. So, how does that mental load manifest? You can feel overwhelmed. You can feel constantly behind. Oftentimes, people have difficulty making decisions, difficulty concentrating. During the daytime, a lot of people report that they're just not using that time responsibly. For me, it's like my kids are at school during the day. So why am I not using this time to plan my content? Why am I not using this time to attend networking events online, even if I can't make it in person? What is going on? Well, it's because that mental load is starting to manifest physically. So you didn't know you were attending a webinar where we talk about the physical part, right? When we have too much going on mentally, it has to go somewhere. So it starts to manifest in our bodies. So maybe you also have difficulty keeping up with deadlines. That's a huge one. For many of you, ordering and tracking and getting those deliveries in time so that when the next wave of, customers start ordering your product, you have it available, but you've been struggling to keep up with the deadlines. And now shipping is going to be delayed, but the customers are still ordering. Now you have more emails coming in, right? Because they want to know, hey, you said it takes approximately 3 days. It's been 7 days. What's going on? Maybe you didn't even reach out to them to let them know it would be late because you're so overwhelmed mentally. How does this impact your health? It's oftentimes that trouble switching off and relaxing during your downtime. That's showing up in other ways. Maybe you live with other people, whether you have roommates or you are in partnership with someone or you're raising children. You're just working during that time, and you're not really getting the benefit of spending time with your loved ones and your friends because you're just so constantly on thinking about all these things you have to do. Maybe there's increased irritability and impatience with the people you love. I'm always trying to show up authentically and be vulnerable. And last year, there were times where my kids were saying, Mommy, can you come do this with me? Can you come read me a book? And I'm like, just 1 minute. I gotta finish this video, or I gotta finish this report. I have to finish typing up this clinical note. I have to finish. How many of you can relate? Like, I just have to finish this. And how often are we saying this where we're not actually finishing the thing? Or we finish the thing that we were working on and then we move to the next thing because then our brains remind us, well, there's actually more you could be doing right now. How much more time do you have? So we're not having enough downtime. We're not relaxing enough. And look, we already are living in a society where, productivity is pushed everywhere you look, on and offline. People are moving fast, depending on where you're living at. I know on the East Coast, there can be a faster pace, right? Everybody's just moving and grooving and no one's actually relaxing. So this shows up in a variety of ways. And then, like I said, at the end of the night, your sleep is disturbed and you're fatigued. One of the things I really want to highlight for you is that everything you see on the screen can also be symptoms of ADHD, can also be symptoms of depression. Maybe not everything in here, right? But that increased irritability or impatience, we see that in depression. We see that in generalized anxiety disorder. We see that in people who have PTSD. Maybe you have some trauma that you have not worked on in psychotherapy yet. You're feeling overwhelmed, difficulty concentrating. Why? Because maybe you're having flashbacks too. Okay. It's not your fault. We can point this back to the trauma. So some of this you can address by using some of the practical strategies I'll share later. And sometimes it's that you'll need to go to therapy to really work on, again, what's underneath that iceberg. It's not always just, well, I just struggle. I'm a procrastinator. I don't switch off. I don't relax well. Okay, Marquita, I just get overwhelmed. That's just me. Well, why though? We always have to ask what's underneath the iceberg because there's always something underneath. Hopefully this is resonating with someone so far. I'm on the other screen. I see some definitely's, right? These signs are very helpful. They really are because and I'm so glad you all are here because we don't, as business owners, often take this time to pause to learn about us. We're pausing to network, to learn about other people's businesses, to share about our own businesses, right? We're trying to get referrals, we're trying to get leads. If you have physical products, you're taking time to go to the stores and shop for the content you need, right? Or you're online shopping, in the US or overseas, you're shopping, you're looking around. How often are we taking time like this to say, I need to prioritize my mental health and attending this specific webinar is going to help me with my mental load. I can handle the other stuff. I do it every day, but I'm tired of handling it the way that I've been handling it so far. It's not mental health effective. So there is a cost. It can have negative impacts on your well-being, increased and prolonged stress. We definitely see that when people finally come to therapy and they say, I've just been stressed for so long. Well, now it's turned from daily stress to now you have an official diagnosis of major depressive disorder. Now there's an official diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder. You know, People talk about being burned out and their productivity is decreasing. All of these are signs. And I don't know if you all know, but a few years ago, they actually made burnout an official clinical diagnosis. It's that prevalent, it's that serious, it's that heavy in our society that it actually has its own diagnosis now. So maybe you get diagnosed with burnout. That constant pressure will cause worry. And it's not just you're worrying only when you're in your business, you're worrying when you're, at the movie theater and you're supposed to be relaxing. You're out to dinner with someone you love. You're celebrating someone's graduation. I know it's graduation season for a lot of high school seniors and a lot of people graduating college in different disciplines. And maybe you're worrying at these events. You can't even settle and just enjoy and clap and hug that person without your brain saying, okay, how much longer are we going to stay at this this backyard barbecue because we got to go get back to work. And difficulty managing your tasks really will threaten your business success. It will threaten also your ability to scale your business. And then, of course, you have that increased risk of depression leading to more time away from your business. Like those diagnoses that I've already mentioned, that PTSD, major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder. Oftentimes, when people do finally get to the place where they reach out and seek help, it's to the point where they're not really actively in their business as often as they need to be to keep things moving, to scale, to grow. And even if they're at a point in business where they tell me, like, Marquita, I actually have the money to hire either contractors or I have enough to hire one employee, they don't have the mental energy to go through the process of posting and advertising to hire someone. Because what happens after you do that? Well, you have to interview people, right? So, do you have the energy to show up for interviews? Do you have the energy to train? Can you see how all of this pressure, this constant pressure, can just compound over time and negatively impact your business? I hope that you can. This is my favorite part, talking about those practical strategies. All right. So I'm a psychotherapist. I have been for 15 years. I mentioned that earlier. So of course, the first line of defense is therapy. Who guessed it? Therapy is, you know what, I'll say this, therapy has transformed my life in more ways than one. I first learned about psychotherapy in my undergraduate studies, my sophomore year at the University of Colorado at Boulder. And I was afraid to go to therapy. I had never heard anything about it. People in my family were saying, do not go to therapy. We don't do that. And I went anyways. Okay. I was disobedient. It was the first time in my life where I was disobedient and it worked out for me. So it's not just going to therapy. If you are either in therapy or you're someone who's never been to therapy and you've been thinking about it, I want to give you some strategy around what type of therapy you should seek. So if anything I've shared in this webinar so far has really resonated with you, it really stands out and you think, that's me, Marquita. Oh my goodness. And I see some chats in there. So after I'm done on this slide, I will definitely kind of respond to what I'm seeing in the chat. If it resonates, then I want you to just go look for any therapist. I want you to be very strategic. So, the first type of therapy is cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, this is wonderful for people who are all in their heads, us type A folks who, who have negative thoughts that come up. I believe the stat is we have, as human beings, over 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. That's a lot. How many of you knew that? Let me know in the chat. We're having all of these thoughts. How many of them could be categorized as positive? How many of them could be categorized as negative? How many are neutral? When you go to therapy, your brain starts to have more neutral thoughts. And even when you have the negative ones, your brain says, oh, let me change that to a positive. That's cognitive behavioral therapy. We're looking and to take those negative cognitions and reframe them into positive ones. We're looking to do some cognitive restructuring too. I know Stephanie's going to share a resource that I shared earlier. It's all the way at the top of the chat. It's labeled Putting Thoughts on Trial. So, Stephanie, I don't know if you could drop that link for everyone now, or if you plan to drop it later, that's fine too. But putting thoughts on trial is a wonderful technique for you because you end up being the defense attorney, you end up being the prosecutor, and you also end up being the judge at the end of the day. You're looking to say, you know what? I'm having this negative thought. I'm having the thought that my business will never grow because I've been struggling with depression for 2 years. We'll just use that thought as an example. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy for short, says, well, we're not going to let that thought live in our head. We're going to take it and we're going to reframe it. I've been in business for years. I've had depression for 2 years. So my business isn't going to grow. Well, let me look at the numbers. My business was growing. It was growing very well up until the time I got depression. So clearly I know what to do. Clearly I know how to make things work in my business. But when we talk about me getting in my head, that's what's challenging my business growth. It's not that I'm not skilled. It's not that I don't know my niche well. It's not that I don't know my customers or the people I serve. It's that something's gotten in the way and I got depressed. I got off track. So CBT helps you reframe that negative to a positive so that you can have a more pleasant experience mentally. Because if you were to think about the thoughts I shared, that negative switching it to a positive, the negative one tends to give me even though I'm not depressed, right? It's not my current story. I get a little tension in my neck just thinking, oh, I've been depressed for 2 years and my business isn't going to grow. But as soon as I reframe that, oh, my shoulders start to come down. I feel some ease in my body because now I'm recognizing that there's something going on. And that's the reason the business isn't growing. And then, of course, the cognitive restructuring, using that, putting the thoughts on trial skills specifically, just has you look at the thought as if you were in a courtroom. Do we have evidence for that thought? Do we have evidence on the negative side? Do we have enough evidence? Probably not. You're probably really good at what you do. You probably have more evidence on the positive side saying you are good at what you do. You have tons of certifications. And outside of that, your certifications, your degrees, your experience, you're probably just really passionate about it. So that the passion and the way you communicate what you do is overwhelmingly positive. So you don't really need to focus on the negative so much when you have a positive reframe. Acceptance and commitment therapy is another type of therapy that may be helpful for you. And all of these you can find someone who does a variety of these, right? It doesn't have to be, oh, I think I only need CBT. A skilled clinician is going to be able to weave several modalities into the therapy with you to help you reach your goal. ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy for short. I'll tell you one skill, it's diffusion. And I talked to a client this morning about diffusion. But if you look at your life as everything is bad, right? All these bad things that pop up, they're threatening my livelihood and I don't like them. Well, you tend to hold that dislike. You tend to hold that anger, and it turns into physical manifestations like soreness in your body, right? Headaches. However, if you say, you know what, I accept, that's the acceptance piece. I accept that business ownership isn't always going to be great. It isn't always going to feel great. There are going to be some ebbs and flows. I'm going to be in and out sometimes, mentally. Sometimes I'm going to want to do it. Sometimes I'm not going to want to. If I can just accept that it won't always be perfect, and if I can commit to making choices that align with my values, values is big in ACT therapy. If I commit to seeing things differently, tying in that CBT, right? Reframing these things, and I can have better outcomes for myself personally and professionally. And one of the ACT skills is actually diffusion. I'm going to put my hand in my face. Diffusion represents that negative thought. So let's go with the negative thought of, I've been depressed for 2 years. I haven't sought any support for it. And I'm feeling really stressed out and my business growth has started to decline. That's the negative thought. Diffusion says we need to diffuse ourselves from it and push it away. What kind of things push it away? Positive thoughts, right? If you do some reframing, some CBT skills, if maybe you go exercise and you relax your body, now you're looking at that thought differently. Maybe you're seeing a professional and you're noticing some ease when you leave those sessions. That's pushing that thought away. Anything you do to diffuse from that thought, that's under acceptance and commitment therapy, because the thought is still there. But now we can view it clearly when it's out here like this. But when it's so close, it's very hard to view that thought. It's very hard to analyze it. One of my favorites is accelerated resolution therapy. I just returned from Fort Myers, Florida this past weekend, attending a training where I actually assisted and coached new professionals, new to this skill, not new in the field of psychotherapy, but it's an amazing therapy that really helps you address the core of traumas by addressing the mental images and the sensations that come up with your body. In this type of therapy, you don't even need to talk about the issue. The therapist will ask if you want to share anything during the eye movement sets. That's what it's a bottom up therapy, which means we address the bottom up, the body up into the mind. We don't start with the mind. CBT starts with the mind, by the way. ACT starts with the brain. It's a top down therapy. So with art therapy, one is actually using the hand and eye movements, right? And they are accessing the memory of the trauma. Now, why am I mentioning trauma? Because the things that I mentioned on the previous slide, sometimes it's showing up. Sometimes that procrastination, that irritability, difficulty thinking through thoughts, sometimes it's because you have some unresolved past trauma. So accelerated resolution therapy is a wonderful type of therapy to address that. Of course, these last two, mindfulness and deep breathing, these are going to help you when you're feeling really stressful throughout the day. And it's a simple strategy that helps you to reduce stress and anxiety. It doesn't cost you anything, it's free to do. My favorite breathing skill is the 4-7-8 breathing technique. You're breathing in for 4 seconds, you're holding it for 7 seconds, and you're releasing it for 8 seconds. The goal is to do that up to 8 times in a row. I only do it 4 times, and it's even after the first time, it's so relaxing. So I know I can't see you all. If you do it right now, I won't know that you're already practicing the 4-7-8 breathing technique. See how much it calms you and helps you self-regulate. And then positive psychology came on the scene years ago, because we have all these traditional methods of psychotherapy, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy. Those are more traditional. And researchers started to ask, well, what about when there's joy in life? Like, what do you? We're focusing so much on trauma. We're focusing so much on maladaptive behaviors. Can we focus on gratitude? Can we focus on the positive things in life? So basically, positive psychology says focus on the things that are going well and focus on them so much that they expand. Practice your gratitude practice and create one for yourself, rather, if you don't have one. Journal. Focus on the good things that are going on in your business, because so often as business owners, we're focused so much on scaling that we're not taking the time to focus on what's going right. And let me sit in that for a minute. We're always collecting wins and just moving, 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 instead of, let me not just collect this win. Let me stop to notice it. Let me stop to acknowledge how much growth it took in me mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, to have this level of growth. That's when you sit in it, right? That's when you don't just check it off and say, great, I achieved that, moving on, got this award, moving on. No, you're practicing positive psychology when you're practicing gratitude. because you're in alignment with your values and the vision you saw for your business has, it's all coming together. So I'm just going to check. Oh, thank you, Stephanie, for putting that worksheet down there, putting thoughts on trial. Make sure you grab that if you haven't already. Yep. Someone said, Amanda said, I went to get a checkup due to depression. Turned out it was a thyroid issue. You never know, right? It's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because oftentimes we are focused so much on the work and we just think, oh, I'm stressed. I'm mentally something's off. Then you finally make time to go see a physician and you find out that it's something else, right? So it's important to focus on ourselves mentally and physically. So important to get checked out. Samantha says, I still have a little trouble learning how to turn off business mode and taking time to actually relax without feeling guilty. Me too. Right? Like we all have that issue sometimes. Well, maybe I shouldn't say all. Some people are better at it than others. Maybe, hey, once it's time for Q&A, let us know your strategies too, right? I have to literally put my phone on the other side of the room and sometimes turn it off to turn these things off. And Stephanie said, I didn't know we had that many thoughts per day, and that's just our own, right? 60 to 70,000. That's a lot of thoughts. I want to be more in control of those thoughts. So the practical strategies I've shared, it actually helps you get more in control of those thoughts, not because they stop coming. This is the important part. Because when they come, you know how to address them. You don't just let them settle in your brain. You actually challenge them. You actually diffuse from them, right? So we're still going to have all these thoughts. We're not going to stop that process, but now we know how to categorize them and manage them. And let's see. Yes, and Stephanie said deep breathing is so helpful. It's amazing. So if I have gotten nothing else across to you today, I want you to know that that mental load is heavy and it can feel like such a heavy burden. And eventually it manifests physically. As Amanda was saying, she was having a thyroid issue. I don't know if that resulted from the mental load. They don't have a test for that to tell us exactly where these medical conditions come from. However, all of these things can eventually manifest in a way where it's not benefiting us. And if you're like myself and you really are passionate about pouring into people, hopefully you can get a sense of my desire to see people live life more joyfully, more authentically. It's hard to pour into people when that mental load is weighing you down. So we have to get it in check. It's so important for us to continue to give back and continue to live in bodies that we actually enjoy living in. How about that, right? Now, speaking of living more authentically, experiencing joy, one of the things we have to talk about as business owners is how we manage our finances. And it's such an important part that anytime I'm logging into the therapist Facebook groups, I see a lot of people talking about tax time, struggling to figure out how they're going to save up for tax time, or they owe taxes, or not actually understanding their numbers. Guess what? Novo's business checking account helps you with that. So Novo has no monthly fees, no minimal balance, right? You can actually scan this code right now and save it for later. So you can take maybe 10 to 15 minutes. It doesn't take long to create an account with Novo. There's a free invoicing tool. Let us know in the comment sections if you do a lot of invoicing. You know, my EHR, my electronic health record system, does all of the invoicing for me. However, on the coaching side, I have a separate coaching business. I've had to use the free invoicing tool. It's come in handy several times. There's a built-in budgeting tool. There are integrations you can tie in. I was using the Stripe integration. I use the Gusto integration. That's what I use for payroll. And there may be some more integrations I use that I've forgotten about. But what I love is that when I log in, as you can see on this screenshot they have for us here, you can see the integrations. You can see the fluctuation of your numbers. You can see how you're doing in business. You can download your statements and balance your books, right? And speaking of balancing the books, there's AI powered bookkeeping in there as well. So you have it all in one place. You're not having to log out just to do your bookkeeping. So it's a wonderful system to have it all in one place. And one of my favorite things that Novo has is Novo Reserve. Now, this is where you can have separate categories for these buckets where you want to put your money, right? So I have a Novo Reserve for my taxes. I mentioned that a lot of therapists owe taxes at the end of the year. I like to make sure that if there's anything extra from my profit, because I operate as an S corp, well, I still have to pay some profit every quarter, right? So I have a Novo Reserve for that. Any project I'm working on, have a online mental health provider directory called Find My Therapist. I have a separate reserve for that. For when I get paid for that through Novo, I can automatically put those funds there. Now, if you are a person who likes to manually move your funds, like myself, then no problem. You can manually remove it, move it over there. You can also set up a rule to automatically assign a percentage of any future income to go directly into a specific reserve. How amazing is that? And you can create up to 20 reserves. So this I really wish this existed in my personal checking account because because I need it to save up for things like vacations and things like that. But when you're a business owner, we all have all of these different things, like maybe they're bonuses, office rent, savings, owner compensation, taxes, whether that be state or federal. The reserves will really help you with that. So keep all your funds in the same account for your business and create up to 20 reserves and organize your money better, right? Prioritize it better. If there's anything that you can take off of your mental load, finances needs to be one of them. You need to have a business checking account that's not stressing you out and where the layout is so clear for you that you're not poking around every time you log in because we don't have that much time to log in and manage these things, right? But when you log in, there's a clear interface and it's all streamlined for you. And that's what Novo offers in the business checking accounts. It's our Q&A time. Who has questions? I know I've thrown a lot of information at you. So this is one of my favorite parts of the webinar because I get to actually hear from the people. I see we're up to 17 people. So you all missed the welcome. Some of you who logged in later. So welcome. Welcome to the mental load of being your own boss. I hope you've gotten some takeaways so far. And I'm just going to scroll back up and scroll through to see what I missed. Yes, Erin had said earlier, she's from Atlanta and with family in Charleston. And oh, for Mother's Day weekend. So happy Mother's Day weekend to anyone who is mothering in any kind of way in your life, right? I have two kiddos, 7 and 9. So I'm going to be celebrating this Mother's Day weekend in a very special way. I can't wait. I already bought my dress, right? It's all about the look and the feel, right? Might even get a massage. That's a part of my ongoing efforts to manage the mental load, getting massages. Hello from Buckhead, Atlanta. Yolanda, thank you so much for joining us. Did you want to add anything, Stephanie? Have I missed anything? Feel free to.
No, I was just gonna say thank you so much. That was so like thorough and enlightening. I feel like there was a lot to consider as far as like personally and looking internally, but also great starting points for looking for solutions and opportunities to kind of like, as you said, manage and be mindful about what we know may be coming up for us. So I wanted to turn
Yeah.
to discussion really and open up the floor. If anyone wanted to come on and just speak directly with Marquita, I can send you an invitation to use your mic. Just go ahead and let us know in the chat. Aaron said, thank you for this. Good to meet you.
Yeah.
Good to meet you, Aaron.
Oh, also, I see that you tagged the next webinar for next month, Breaking Chains, Unlocking Your Business Potential Through Healing. So if you are available on that date, is it April 8th or April 10th? I can't remember the date. But if you click on the link, it'll tell you the date. I believe it's also on a Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to go more into the trauma and how that shows up in our lives personally and professionally, and especially how it impacts our business growth, how it stunts our growth, rather, when we have unresolved trauma. And a lot of people see themselves as just pushing through, and you don't have to just push through. There are therapies that will help you get through this in a more streamlined way so you're not stressed out all the time. And I mean, what's better than healing? I've experienced my own healing from childhood trauma, and it's the reason I can, log into a webinar and not be nervous. It's the reason I can continue to do the work and pour into other people because I know that therapy is transformative. And I know that when you address the core of your traumas, there's nothing stopping you. Like it's only up from there. So that's all I'll say about that one. But it's a little sneak peek. You might want to sign up for that one so we can really go through that. Samantha said, "Wow." Let's see.
Yolanda has I really love these questions. She asks Marquita, well, first she says, thanks for the grand presentation.
Oh, you're so welcome, Yolanda. Thank you for joining.
And then she asks, do you do any time blocking or assign certain tasks to specific days?
Mhm. I do, yeah. I wish I could show you my calendar. So I have a day where I do marketing for specific things. I started a podcast, so on Sundays I go through all of my tasks that I need to do for my marketing and for the business for the week, and update anything I need to update. I don't do any scheduling, so I should be very honest about that. I have tried using those systems like Monday, I think Monday.com. There are others, or even inside of Facebook or Instagram scheduling suites. It just does not work for me. And I do find that the features are different within those platforms. And sometimes you can't do the hashtag, or sometimes you can't write as much as you want in the caption. So I like to be in control. I'll be honest with you all. I'm a little bit of a control freak. So so I like to do the posting in my own time. But as far as preparing the content, I'm doing that on Sundays typically, and a little bit throughout the weeks. But I do some time blocking, and when I do, it's usually no more than 30 minutes to an hour at a time. And I'll allow myself to jump between tasks. So Yolanda, I'm so glad that you asked that question, because some people, when they do time blocking, they're neurodivergent. I'm also neurodivergent. I have a diagnosis of obsessive compulsive disorder. So I can't just focus on one task for more than 20 to 30 minutes. So what I do is when I time block, I'll say it's for this task or that one. So whenever my brain is ready to switch, I honor that and I move to the next task. And then I just kind of jump back and forth. I'll have like two tabs up. So time blocking does not have to be so strict for you that you only use, do one thing during that time. If your brain needs a little bit of variety like mine, if you have that neurodivergency, then allow it to happen. Because oftentimes when we put resistance up to it, that's when we get stressed out and then we abandon the task, or we abandon the time blocking segment altogether. But when you give yourself freedom to be who you are naturally in your own brain, then I find that there's less resistance for people. So that was a really great question about time blocking. And Amanda was responding from earlier that she's sure the depression or the stress was related to the thyroid issue. So yeah, just another example. Thank you for sharing that, Amanda. It's just another example of how the stress manifests physically in our bodies.
Yeah.
Left out of control, or when we just don't catch it because we're so busy, it can just skyrocket into something else that could be preventable. We never know.
I wanted to add part two to
Yeah.
your question, and then I see another from Aaron. So, how do you let peers, family, and friends know about the flow of your week or peak work times during the year?
I love that question. So I think in visuals, right?
Hey, Marquita, you want to go ahead and take the Q&A slide down?
Oh yeah, sure, sure. Of
Your
course.
lovely face.
Yep,
Thank you.
I sure will. Okay, perfect. So this morning, my husband asked me, "What's on your agenda for today?" so, so there's just a natural check-in that we have. We don't have a certain time to do it, but usually we check in. We both work from home, so usually we're checking in at the beginning of the day after we get the kids dropped off at school. And so I just kind of let him know. And sometimes I'll just text him my schedule and let him know what I have going on. So we're not both fighting for the office space. So that's how I let them know. As far as holidays, I'm probably different than some other psychotherapists. A lot of people take a lot of time off during the holidays. I have structured my business in a way where I don't have to see more than eight clients a week. So during the holidays, I still have people who schedule. I can work from anywhere since I'm an all telehealth therapist. I'm licensed across 4 states. So even if I go home to Louisiana for the holidays, I can still just post up in a room and see my clients. Now, I do block off certain days, like the day of Christmas, the day of Thanksgiving. Obviously, I'm off for the weekend, so I won't be working on Mother's Day. But I really have a lot of people in my life that respect what I do, and when it's more about me communicating. So I always align with, I don't want others to have to guess what's going on in my business. So I'm always offering this information. If we're traveling somewhere and I know I'm still going to be working, I'm talking about that before we even book the plane tickets. With my parents, like, hey, I'm going to see about 5 clients the week before Christmas and we're going to be there. Is that okay? And my mom's like, absolutely. Do you want me to watch the kids? So I think it's all about just communication about those different ebbs and flows, the different holidays, and how you're going to handle it. Because usually, when we tell other people how we're going to handle it and our expectation for ourselves, then they understand, oh, okay, this is what's needed of me. Or maybe you have people where you have to more clearly say, this is what I need of you. So having those moments of check-in with people in your life, that can be very helpful. Hopefully that's helpful. I saw two I love Novos. Aaron said, I'm a current customer. I love Novo. And Amanda said, love Novo. Never thought I would say that about my business banking. I agree. I am three. I am with you all. I love Novo as well. Let's see.
Aaron had this to say that, and Aaron, if you'd like to come on, go ahead and give me a little wave in the chat so I can send you the invite. I'll just go and send it. Are you able to see that one, Marquita?
Yeah. That next one
Yes.
is yes. So Aaron says, I have ADHD and I always feel extreme guilt and beat myself up for my lack of concentration. Do you have any tips to enhance productivity, consistency? The funny part is people will say, create your list the night before, but I forget more often than not. Laugh out loud. Oh, hi, Aaron. Aaron hopped on with us. Welcome. Yeah. One of the, and I see, were you going to say something?
Marquita, this is really. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me? I'm not sure
Yeah,
about my internet.
I can hear you now. Yeah, it was a little
Because
frozen for a while.
okay, yeah, it gets a little frustrating. I'm sorry, I look crazy, but it gets
You're fine.
because hold on, it's a little frustrating. I'm in a house full of people, because that's my aunt. Sorry, I get a little frustrated because people don't understand ADHD. Especially when people don't have ADHD, they think they have ADHD. Like it's really tough to function with it. I would just love your input on that.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you for joining. And I don't mind your people in the background. Let them get this message too, right? Because even if they're not business owners, it can bless them. So with ADHD, oftentimes when people come to me and they talk about it like it's something that's ruining their lives. And certainly the struggles with attentiveness, for some people, hyperactivity, productivity, consistency, it can be overwhelming. And what I like to do is help people reframe it into their superpower. And so I want to encourage anyone who might have ADHD who's listening to look at the areas where ADHD actually benefits you. And I'm saying this as a person who has the diagnosis of obsessive compulsive disorder. And like you said, Aaron, no one understands it, right? Everybody's like, that's just something different. I don't get it, right? Well, when I need to remember details, OCD is my superpower because I can obsess over a certain detail and remember it, right? Even if I don't write it down, even if I don't get out of my bed to write it down, I actually am going to remember it because I'm just going to tell my brain to store it. So there may be ways that your ADHD can actually serve you that haven't been identified yet. That's what I find with people. And when once people realize, oh, that actually is something that could benefit me, then they can lean into it more and allow it to serve them. If there are times where you can time block, I think for a person with ADHD, it can be helpful to, similar to OCD, allow yourself to do what you need to do during that time, even if it's jumping across tasks. Because most people teach time blocking as just only work on that one thing. Well, you're also neurodivergent if you have ADHD. Your brain just thinks differently. And so instead of putting up resistance to it, you can just allow yourself to kind of jump, but maybe give yourself a max. I'm not going to jump. And this is what I do. I will jump to another task within the time blocking, but not more than two, because that's two. That starts to feel overwhelming, right? But if I'm just jumping from editing a podcast episode to responding to emails, then okay, my brain can handle that. And now it doesn't feel like so much restriction. I do feel like the way that you look at the symptoms could be helpful. So I know that you said you feel extreme guilt and you beat yourself up for your lack of concentration. And so if you intentionally allow yourself to input some more positive psychology into there, like, hey, my brain just works differently, and try to remove the guilt, remove the I'm going to beat myself up, and just say, I'm going to instead focus on what kind of strategy can I create for my ADHD brain that will be satisfying. That may even be helpful because the more you beat yourself up, the more you're going to increase the lack of productivity, the lack of consistency, but the more gratitude you practice around other things in life, right? Not ADHD, but I got all these great things going on outside of this. And I can also acknowledge that I have some strengths and maybe I can tie those into the times where I'm struggling with consistency and productivity. That can be helpful. It may not be helpful for you to have a list the night before. create a list the night before if you notice that you're forgetful. Sometimes people who have ADHD even report setting an alarm doesn't help them. I'm like, could you set an alarm? Nope. Could you put it on your calendar? Nope. so, so you really do have to get creative. So I will ask you, Aaron, if you feel comfortable answering, when is your brain reminding you of things that you need to do to be productive and consistent? Like, when are these times? Is it when you're in bed? Is it when you're actually doing the work? Like, when are these times coming up for you?
To be either at night before I go to bed or in the morning when I first wake up.
Okay, okay. So it's at night before you go to bed, or it's in the morning. At night before you go to bed, when you're reminded, are you in a place where you could jot it down or put it in your phone?
I've started putting a notebook next to my bed, but I then I forget it's there. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I do know that some discipline I think is going to be a part of it, just
Mm-hmm.
around personal responsibility. But what I have found is sometimes I have like 13 alarms in my phone
Mm-hmm.
for different things, just
I've
because I
heard that.
can't.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I will do that and say, do this here. And I think Yolanda, my fellow Atlantan, in the chat, she said that, she set an alarm to do something at 8, but she didn't get to it till 11. And
Mm-hmm.
so what I have found is that I've started to put 3 things, whether it's at night or in the morning. I'll say, okay, these are your 3 things. And I also have a whiteboard in my living room. I've started doing that. But I will walk past that thing like it doesn't exist. So I have to put multiple, like my whole house is filled with like a bunch of stuff. And but
Yeah.
I do like what she said about as long as she got to it, she got to it
Yeah.
at 11.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's I feel like with ADHD, there's a lot of flexibility that's needed. So there's a lot of grace that's needed. You'll understand. I'm a neuro spicy girl myself. I'm neuro spicy too. So we're all in good company, right? We have to have grace for ourselves, and it's also so important to just say, okay, maybe when I set the alarm, I didn't pay attention to it. I walked right past my whiteboard. But when I get in my car, if there's a post-it note on my steering wheel, for some reason I don't ignore that. So sometimes it's about figuring out which one do you not ignore. Because a lot of times as neurodivergent people, we focus on we shame ourselves for what we're not getting versus putting attention to what we are getting. So if it is that you can make an appointment on time if you blank, then do that more often versus trying to set the alarm or all the other things, right? So it's kind of like, how do we minimize it to something that actually triggers your brain to say we need to do that task? And I will say that most people I work with who have ADHD, they want to avoid medication. Psychotropics can be very helpful. It can be very helpful to get a consultation to see how it might benefit you, because all it does is take the edge off and help you see things more clearly. And even if it's for a short period of time, for you to practice some of the strategies and figure out what works for you and what your new system is, nothing wrong with that. And then maybe you get off of it. So, and I don't prescribe medication, so I'm not endorsing any particular medications. I'm just saying, I think a lot of times, especially as business owners, we're highly intelligent. So we think this is simple. I should get this. I should just be more consistent. I should just prioritize more. I should just stop all of this. What's wrong with me? What's something going on in the brain? You're neurospicy. So it's just that your brain, it's nothing wrong with you. Your brain just works different. So how do you adapt to that? So for some people, it's medication. Most people I work with do not want to take medication. It is a heavier lift if you're practicing these strategies naturally, because doing it naturally, the guilt has to go down, the shaming has to go down, and people have to give themselves enough space to just practice creating the new habits, practice acknowledging what works for them, and not shame themselves so they can actually lean into those things more versus trying all the other things that aren't working. So whatever's not working, we got to find something that does work. That's all that says. It doesn't say anything's wrong with you. It just means your brain says that I can pass past that whiteboard and not notice it. That's not working for me. So what's the next thing? So I hope that's helpful. I should ask, is that helpful to give you something to think about? Oh, you're frozen again. I'll just go up here while you're coming back. I'm just reading these notes to make sure I didn't miss anything based on what we're currently discussing. Okay, so Yolanda had said, I'm neurospicy. I assign a big task to each day and don't push a set amount of time to the task activities. I love that. The time limits are stressful. I agree. When we put a time limit on something, especially as neurospicy adults, our brain is going to work hard to not make that achievable. It's just we're setting ourselves up for the resistance versus just saying in between this time I'm going to do a max of 2 to 3 things, and if I go over time, that's okay because my brain might just need a little more time, or maybe I just really enjoyed that task. Right, giving yourself space to just really enjoy it. uh, Replying to LinkedIn, replying to messages on LinkedIn was set at 8 a.m. You didn't start until 11 a.m. That's perfect. You know what I had to start doing with emails was I will draft the email in Gmail and I will just schedule it to send at 8 a.m. in the morning. And to me, that does two things for my brain. One, I don't want to send it really late and risk getting a reply really late because then I would feel pressure to reply. Two, I want people to think, oh, she's up bright and early. She look at her, she's on task. It does something to my brain to know that it's going out at 8 a.m., right? That response. But I don't have to do it at night before I go to bed. I don't have to be in a rush, right? There's we're not talking about life-threatening scenarios. I think that's another thing for everyone on the live to hear, especially if you are neurospicy like myself. We're not dealing with life or death scenarios, but our brain is telling us that we are, right? The OCD brain, the ADHD brain is saying, because you didn't do it this way, because you're a procrastinator, because you're not being as consistent as some other people are, because maybe they're not neurospicy, something's wrong with you, right? And there's nothing wrong with you. There's everything that's right with you because your brain just works differently. So how do we address these things and recognize that it's okay that we have to address them differently? So let's see. Okay, so Stephanie said, I noticed that when you listed the way mental load can manifest, that some of the symptoms are effects of mental load, but they can feel like causes of issues and delays. Yep. Reframing seems to enable us to work with what actually works for us regardless of how it looks. Exactly. That's why I love reframing. Like, oh, I didn't get it done between 9 to 11, like I said I was going to, but I actually got it done. And even though I jumped from that task, I was able to cook a meal for my family. Okay. Like that lightens my mental load, because sometimes I do, I time block and say, I'm going to work on this at this time. Next thing you know, I'm in the kitchen fixing my lunch. And then I'm also fixing dinner. I'm like, what am I doing? So, but instead of beating myself up, I said, oh, you still got a lot done. All right, let's look at the calendar and see when you can finish doing these other tasks that you said you were going to do. You didn't finish them. That's okay. Yeah. So let's see. Stephanie said, making discipline into a loving and honest conversation with ourselves. I love that, Stephanie, because it perfectly sums up what I'm trying to share. I can be wordy, but making discipline into a loving and honest conversation with ourselves. That's all it is, right? We're keeping ourselves on track lovingly. I will also say, I'm so glad you wrote that, Stephanie, because sometimes when people grew up in homes where everything they did was dictated by caregivers and everything you did was wrong, and it seemed like you can never do anything right, it is a challenge to have a loving and honest conversation with yourself. And so this is where we reparent ourselves. Because a lot of people who have ADHD, well, they got diagnosed usually in the 20s, or but sometimes as kids, right? And then everything around you was, oh, you just don't do it fast enough. Oh, you can't be consistent. You didn't make up your bed yet again. It's all this negativity that was being infused versus saying, okay, babe, your brain just works a little different. It's okay. Like I have neurodivergent kids too. So like it's okay. Your brain works a little different. I did ask you to do that 5 times. Okay, I did. But now I'm gonna show you, right? I'm sorry, mommy. I always tell my kids, I don't need you to say you're sorry. Let's just do it together. Let's just get it done. All I want is for it to get done. So how do you need to get it done? Do you need to turn the TV off? And they'll say, no, 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 no. We can clean up and pause the TV. Show me. Show me you can do it. They show me, right? They pause the TV, or they don't pause the TV. They keep watching it and they clean it up. Is it slower? Yes, but they're still getting it done. So there's no shaming. So if you grew up in a home where you were shamed for basic things, then it's going to be really hard as an adult to not shame yourself for those basic things. You can reparent yourself and lovingly have that honest conversation with yourself, like Stephanie said. Stephanie, I'll pause. Was there anything you wanted to say too? Because I know I'm just going through the notes here.
No, just as we go to the hour, I wanted to say a huge thank you to you and to the audience today, but less to the audience, but for the conversation in the chat for those of you who've been so present, and just wanted to encourage everyone to, before you head out, if you need to, as we're at the hour, please be sure to use some of those links that we've shared, whether it's to stay connected with Marquita directly online, or it's the worksheet that we shared, or if it's signing up for Novo. But we'll be back here again next week with more topics, but next month with Marquita again for breaking chains and getting into unlocking healing, just like you said earlier. But I just wanted to, draw attention to that again and say thank you so much.
Perfect. So I'll say that, thank you for that, Stephanie. Yolanda wrote that some people have an accountability person. I have one. All right. My accountability partner and I use Voxer to communicate daily. We check in and say, hey, here's what I'm doing today. She lets me know what she's doing today. And, midday, we're checking in with each other. Hey, did you get that thing done? No, girl, I'm getting on it. Thank you for the reminder. I forgot to make it a task. Again, no shaming. This is why I have an accountability partner, right? Thank you for bringing that up again. So thank you for sharing that, Yolanda. And yes, it feels good to say congratulations to yourself. And it is contagious to have this positive energy. That's what positive psychology is all about. Just spreading that positivity, not into other areas of your life, right? Maybe your personal life is going really great, but business isn't so much because you want it to grow. Well, what's going great in your personal life? Spread that positivity over there.
Exactly. Or even something I realized recently where I was, like you said, with graduation season. And actually, it was more heartening because it was folks who were kind of past that kind of like obvious prime of like early 20s and
Yeah.
the kind of customary moving through. So they're like, you kind of initiate those yourself more as you move through life, right? So I got the opportunity just to say congratulations to a good few people, like in a row, like 5 people in one day. I was like, this is
Yeah.
awesome. Like, I feel like I can go do whatever I need to do too. And like, just because of the feedback loop of like realizing how much good is happening
Yeah.
can kind of bring you out of some of those. For me, it helped bring me out of some triggers and things like that when there's the
Yeah.
balance of like, oh, there is a whole lot of good happening too that you couldn't possibly
Mhm.
um, capture. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Borrowing the joy from other people, borrowing other people's confidence. Maybe you have like an accountability partner that's super confident, and you say, you know what, I want to borrow that person's confidence, or like in Stephanie's example, borrowing the joy from other people graduating. And I agree. I see a lot more people. I'm in my early 40s, and a lot of people in their 40s getting their bachelor's or first master's. And I'm like, you go ahead, right? Like you do it. Or even people getting their high school diploma, their GED, because they're like, I started having kids, I never did it. I'm like so happy for them. So I borrow that energy. I love that feedback loop in the accountability relationships. Exactly. There's such a feedback loop. Samantha said, I started changing up how I capture and organize my tasks. I used to feel bad that I couldn't stick to a plan because I like freedom. But now I plan in a way that feels good to me. Like now I am cleaning up my task list to be more organized and feel less overwhelming. I go between paper and digital. Yep. Planning because it just depends on the season she's in, right? So it's really about catering it to what you need, right? I'm a digital planner and some people prefer paper. So but I can also use my OCD brain reminder if I don't want to touch my phone because I know that if I write that task down at night, it's going to reset me, right? I'll just say in my brain, remember that thought. And in the morning, it's the first thought in my brain because it was the last thing my brain thought of. My subconscious mind grabbed onto it. So at least that's how it works for me. So yeah, you'll see. Someone said they ignore their alarms and tasks. Yep. That's just a norm. Ignore them. Let's see. Oh, okay. Erin said, I wasn't diagnosed until 8 years ago. I was 41. It helped me understand my entire life so much. Yeah. Getting that diagnosis later in life, I find that it all makes so much sense because they're like, whoa, now I really understand why I struggled in these different areas of life. And then it's like, what do I do now? Like now, I'm a full grown adult. What do I do now? So that's why it's so important to get some support. I know an anxiety coach out in Atlanta too. I can't remember. I think y'all said you were in Atlanta. There's a therapist who does separate anxiety coaching for people because with psychotherapy, there's less of that accountability piece, that day-to-day check-in. But with a coach is permitted to do that ethically. So that's also an option. If anyone wants the information for that anxiety coach, let me know. And I'm happy to share that via email. Let's see. Okay, we got some you're welcomes. Thank you all. Yes, to all of the lovely participants. Did I miss anything? Was there anything I missed that anyone wanted to ask or anything? Okay, Erin, yeah, absolutely. Please, met, oh, I didn't have the page with my contact information. Oh, I think that was after that next one. Yes. Please feel free to reach out, Erin, and I'm happy to share her name and information with you.
Sorry, for some reason it wouldn't allow me to pin, so I
Oh, okay.
re- reposted it again.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to put this up really quickly, if that's okay. This screen with the contact information,
Yes.
so people know how to reach me to get that additional resource. I definitely want you to get that.
Mm.
Yep. So that's how you can connect with me. If you just email me, I'll grab her information and get that to you. And I will also pull up your IG here, Erin. I have it pulled up in a separate tab. Perfect. Thank you. I will accept that connection and follow you back after the webinar. Yeah, sometimes it's like, let's be resourceful. I really want to encourage everyone that, that mental load is heavy. We don't have to beat ourselves up. There is help. There are different types of therapeutic modalities. There are coaches that can help you with different things. And ultimately, we are our biggest critics, as I think we've already exemplified with several discussions. We criticize ourselves more than anyone else is ever going to do it because, again, we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day. So we don't need anyone else to critique us. We're doing enough of it ourselves. So being that we're already critiquing ourselves enough, we can afford to pull back and take that pressure off. We can afford to look at what resources are in our communities to get some additional support for ourselves so we don't have to do it all alone. You can reparent yourself. And anytime you didn't get, the soft and gentle response you deserved as a child, you absolutely deserve to get it then, and you deserve to get it now too. Just because we're adults does not mean we don't need to be gentle with ourselves. So please, everyone, I hope you took some positives away from this webinar. And again, I hope you join us next month for Breaking Chains so we can dive into a little bit of how childhood trauma can show up. It's definitely shown up for me in different ways in business. And thankfully, I've been open to therapy for myself to address the ways that it's shown up so that I can be my best self, the best version of myself that I want to be when I'm client facing. So perfect. Well, Stephanie, I don't see any more messages, so I think we're good to end the webinar. Do you have anything you want to say before we go? I'm very grateful for everyone who stayed on. I know some people had to hop off. Well, if not, we're just going to end the webinar. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Please feel free to reach out to me on any of these channels if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. We love feedback. And join everyone. Actually, let me go to this. Oh, that's the last page. Noble has an alignable community and a Facebook community. I thought I had the slide up with that information, but I don't. So my apologies. But you can definitely find the Novo community in a Facebook group. And you can also find the Novo's community in the Alignable group. I think there are over 7,000 people in the Alignable group. So you may also enjoy networking in there. And we're also posting about these events in both of those groups. So let's all make sure we stay connected so we can continue supporting each other in growing a business. I'm going to go ahead on and end the stream. And I appreciate you all for showing up today.